Yo, 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 what's going on, fam? It's your boy Tahir Johnson, and I'm back with another week of the Cannabis Diversity Report. I got my good brother from Jersey, Nadir Pearson, in the house. What up, fam?
What is going on, Tyler here? Thank you for having me. Shout out to
Absolutely.
NCIA family.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So, for everybody listening, Nadir's the founder of the Student Marijuana Alliance for Research and Transparency, among many other things. This brother's making major moves in the cannabis industry. Man, just tell the folks out there a little bit about you, about Smart, and how you got in the cannabis industry.
Yeah, so I'm a New Jersey native, born and raised, and ultimately made my way to Brown University for college. I was a former D1 athlete, and ultimately, as my career progressed, I got a few concussions playing and had to make a pivot. And that time I was still in college. I still had a lot to do, but hadn't really explored my interest beyond sport. So, yeah, my sophomore year was a really important time for me to be in Boston, Rhode Island, New England area, and just start to get immersed into the industry, go to events like Women Grow, go to conferences like NCIA had, in Boston. So all those kind of early experiences is how I got started.
Yeah, and so for you as an athlete, right? Like, did you use cannabis at all to like help medicate or help with healing or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, most college athletes are, they typically use cannabis more than just the typical student. Anytime that I've met athletes, they're pretty familiar, with just kind of using cannabis as an alternative, right? For me personally, with the concussions and the migraines, that was definitely something that, cannabis was there for me. I couldn't really, that's not something that you're able to promote on campus, but luckily me as an Ivy League athlete, we don't really have drug testing in the same way that typical D1 schools have. So typical D1 schools get tested for cannabis and for steroids, where we just get tested for steroids. So I was still able to medicate in that way, because it's the intensive sport on your body, on your mind. So having something that isn't an aspirin all the time, isn't an Advil all the time, that's going to be breaking down your body when you're, if you keep using that, it was definitely good to have cannabis there.
Yeah, man, and like we were talking about before we went live, I'm a Howard dude, so us Howard folks are always going hard, and I'm always putting on for HBCUs. But
Yeah.
I definitely want to show you some love. I see you got the brown swag on, for a young Ivy League brother, man. Like, what was that experience like? Going there, because I know it's not always the most diverse. So what was that experience like coming through an Ivy League?
Yeah. I mean, definitely, to your point, a little bit the opposite of a HBCU and the Howard experience, but definitely you learn a lot. I know I went to boarding school in high school in Connecticut, so that prepared me a lot for what a PWI was like. It just got me to be very familiar with, those who are in the 1% who could afford to pay my tuition, over a vacation, right? And so that was kind of like a formative experience for me, just to be like, okay, cool, this is what it's like here. By the time I got to college, I already had lived on my own. I had already, just been around people that were very different than me and my upbringing. So by the time I got to Brown, I definitely had a head start, because I know a lot of my counterparts that were freshmen were dealing with that culture shock of like, oh shit, like these people here been to Martha's Vineyard so many times and I've never left my block, right? So there's a very, stark contrast in terms of what people are familiar with, like, the conversations that you're having with people and like what you can do, right? And how your friend groups are shaped. So for me going to Brown, like I said, I was just knowing that was ultimately going to be my network for years later. So I kind of just, use that to my advantage as much as possible.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I think that is definitely something that does help to give you advantage because even though I went to a HBCU, I experienced the same thing. Like I went to Princeton Day School in New Jersey
Okay, yeah.
growing up. So, being in that private school, it makes you prepared where you can, like you said, I knew how to be in that group and interact and then come back to the hood and interact and be the same person. So learning those skills early on, I mean, it means so much.
Right. And I mean, I would say additionally, like just taking your learnings and being able to kind of break it down and translate it. A lot of a lot of the things that we see in the world today are just like very simple. We just make it complicated, whether it's via terminology, whether it's like legalese, right? Or all these other ways that it's kind of a barriers to entry for accessibility. And I think, through the work that we're doing in the space, but just even through, that experiences right there is like being able to kind of be this Robin Hood of information, right? Of like, well, I learned this here. Let me bring this back to people that, I know need to know this and get a little bit more ahead in life, right? So I think that's kind of my biggest like push and drive, even going into cannabis.
Right. And so, and staying on that same note, like, so, and that's something that you've always been about, right? Like, that's what you do is smart. Like, how did you get the idea to start the organization, and how did it come about?
Yeah, I remember. It was funny. I like, as much as I remember like coming up with the name and like being like, hey, I want to do this, right? It was really just going into, I remember I went to see Beth Waterfall, Beth at a Women Grow at the time, Northeast. Sorry, I forget their name. But they're just out of New England, and nonetheless, like I was going there, I would go to NECAN a lot. And through there, I just was the only 19, 20-year-old, right? So what that really got me to look around and say, like, well, I know I'm the only young person here. A lot of people are making transitions from careers that they have already had. Why isn't that the case, right? And it wasn't because the industry wasn't looking for young people to get involved. It wasn't because, young people didn't want to get involved. It was because there was a disconnect here of saying, hey, we're busy running our businesses. We haven't necessarily made the time or effort to look at the next generation, right? To look at who's going to help us and support these businesses, whether it's the workforce side, whether it's, just young people who typically are the talent pipeline into new careers and into new jobs, right? When you look at Goldman Sachs, when you look at Facebook, Google, all these people are having heavy recruiting programs out of colleges, right? They invest tons and tons of money into colleges and kind of bringing them on and creating more engagement, even for freshmen and sophomore who aren't necessarily just maybe be doing internships, right? So because of all that, and the absence of that in the cannabis space really got me thinking about what that could look like, years from now. So, thinking about education, research, and just job opportunities as a whole for people that, look like me, both Black and brown, but look like me in terms of, just being younger folks would need to get access to. So, I just started at Brown in 2017. We got that approved on campus. That was at a time when the industry was still very stigmatized, like even much more. Like there was still Colorado, there's still California, right? But I guess that still wasn't enough for people at the time to realize that this was going to be something for real. Nonetheless, though, people were, we had SSDP for folks who are familiar, right? Students for Responsible Drug Policy was at Brown. But I did want to create something that was very specifically targeted for cannabis because SSDP is a little bit broader and also spoke to a little bit of the entrepreneurship, a little bit more of the job opportunity and professional development that isn't necessarily inherent in SSDP. It's part of it because you do the work on the policy side, but there wasn't something that really spoke to how to bring kind of the majors of, whether it's biology, sociology, marketing, finance, how do you bring that and intersect that with this space and create more pathways for that? So long story short, that was kind of like, the full gamut of what kind of inspired me to create Smart, and just seeing that the lack of in a lot of things. So
And so how many campuses are you on now, and what kind of different programs and things do you offer to students?
So right now we're around 5-6 chapters. So Brown University, we got Tuskegee in Alabama, we got University of Texas Austin, Cornell, obviously Brown, I might have counted that already. We have Stockton University, New Jersey, Rutgers University, New Jersey, right? So, it's definitely been great to have some, like, I think, the way we've been able to expand is just through digital media, through, social media marketing and making it so that, people can find us. Now, most recently, what we've been doing is a lot of just webinars. Originally, our big event that we had in 2018, we had our college cannabis exhibition with High Times and Leafly. Oh, excuse me. So that was a really big event there, just to bring students from across the Northeast. We had kids drive from as far as like 3 hours away. We had over 100 students come out. So that was like just a big formative event, right? To just bring like-minded individuals together, have this also be on a college campus, right? I think that's important as well. As like the more events that we can have regarding cannabis on college campuses is important, because these are, like the institutions that are leading knowledge in our world, right? And then now looking more towards like, can we do, in our virtual landscape, can we do more job fairs online? How can we prepare students and getting them access to educational content? Right now, our website typically has a lot of like blogs that you can go on there that we've written that are just starting to introduce stories of people that are in our network, and also vocabulary, like what is a multi-state operator, right? That's a blog that we want to start making sure that people understand this terminology and lingo, right? So that's one thing that we're doing on our site. And I know right now, talking to our team internally, we're going to be having a webinar. Well, there's one today that I'll be on for Michigan State University. They have Charlie Batchel, I believe his name is, the CEO of Cresco, is going to be joining. So I'll be on there for a panel. And additionally, we'll have CWCB Expo this week, which we'll be giving all our students free access to. So things like that, same thing we've been talking about, National Cannabis Industry Association, just making sure that students can find access to these events. Sometimes they're a little bit expensive for a college student. And so increasing that access, lowering the barrier to entry, so that everybody can get involved and we can all learn.
Absolutely, man. And lowering that barrier to entry is something that's so critical to making sure that you said that all types of people have opportunities, especially today, man. Like you said, something you hit on is that everything exists in the digital space now, right? It's like if you're not online, you're not really doing it. And I know even before we met like 2 years ago, I see that you've always been strong, right? I guess you've aged, right? You've always been strong on social media. You've always had a strong digital presence. Like what is some advice that you can give for people in, how to tackle that? How do you build that strong online presence? And also how can you like build a business and everything online through that?
Right. Yeah. I think the misconception that people have about online presences is that they're solely built online. Right. That is like a touch point that people have for you to connect with you, to communicate, and for you to also communicate with them. Right. In terms of social media, your platforms and profiles, right? And I think a lot of people don't realize is like, I don't get followers from, just posting all the time. Like I get followers from going to events and connecting with people, right? And going to conferences and making sure that, I follow this account and they know me afterwards. And, I introduced you to so-and-so, so let's stay in touch, right? And not all the time is it like, give me your number. Sometimes it is, but, Instagram is another great tool and kind of staying connected and having people just be aware of the things that you're doing, right? So it's like, you can easily start to do some inception on people, right? And just like plant seeds of ideas of things that you're going to be doing through your social, but meeting them in person too, to really forge that connection, I feel like is the most important part. Because if people didn't meet me in person, I don't think everything would be as good. Like if it was only just knowing me from online, I don't think the connections would be as strong. But then for people to be like, oh, I met this guy in real life, he's actually like how he is more or less online. So that's kind of cool, right? And it's not like a total switch up of the person, right? And then boom, that makes you want to follow along. That makes you want to engage, right? So I think that is a balance of the authenticity of also, like I said, just meeting people where they are, and don't think that social is like everything's digital because it's digital. Nowadays it is, because we're in Corona. And what I would say to that is like, really think about like what we're doing now, right? Just like cross promoting with people that so that y'all can introduce each other to each other's audiences. Because as much as like me and Tahir may have a lot of people that we follow the same, there's still a lot of people that we don't, right? And a lot of people that would love to be introduced, from my network and vice versa. So I think that's kind of like, one definitely like tidbit that I would give.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big one, man. Like you said, like the fact that you're this online presence is like your real presence, right? Like it's not just some made up stuff. Like if somebody meets me, like I'm same dude, right? And And it is so important for us to bring our audiences together. And speaking of IG, man, I seen you was blazing with Wiz the other day, man. Talk about that, man. How'd you even do that?
Don't say the other day like it was like literally yesterday.
Like 2 weeks ago, like 3 weeks ago, something like that. Right?
Yeah, it was during COVID. You know what I'm saying? It was COVID. During. It was I'm not gonna say during COVID. It was during the first part of COVID, right? And so yeah, that was when I was working at Herb. For those folks who don't know, like to your point, like I've been working at Smart, but I've mainly been doing a lot of like digital strategy, consulting in the space on the freelance side. So previously worked at High Times, and then I just got done working at Herb.co, which afforded me that opportunity to connect with Wiz, just for the fact that I was, just like I was running the Herb account on Instagram, Facebook, etc. on social, and Wiz was doing like his I'm gonna go on and smoke with people all the time because it's COVID and we in the crib. So he was doing that, and I'm like, man, it's Herb, the Herb account is Wiz, like that's two peas in a pod. We're also verified on Instagram, right? So like that account sticks out if you drop comments. Like if you're verified and you comment on an IG live of somebody who's verified, your comment will show up. You know what I mean? So I just stuck to my guns, and then I submitted the request to go live. He picked up, and I was like, "Oh shit, let me go, let me go run to smoke my bong real quick." And then he was like mad chill. That's why I'm like super excited. I was like, "All right, he's still like to your point, the same person that I more or less felt like he was gonna be, right, based on how he's portrayed himself." And he was like, "Yeah, like go ahead and get the bong, like no worries, bro. Get the girl." So like, you know what I mean? It wasn't like, "Yo, hurry up and smoke or I'm gonna X you out." Like,
no, that's facts. He definitely is, and he's definitely always really smoking too.
Right.
That is wild. That is one of them funny things. Like you hit the button on IG, not expecting it to happen. You're like, "Oh shit, I'm live."
Yeah. So exactly. So he gave me my second to get the bong out, and then we just started talking about like this is when COVID and 5G and everything was at an all-time high, and nobody knew what was going on. So like I said, it was a very rich experience for somebody who loves smoking weed, who loves this space. Everybody wants to talk to Wiz, even if it's on live for 15 seconds. So I definitely was honored.
Right. Yeah, man. And talking about the media thing a little bit more, like you said, you were at Herb and then previously High Times, which is like a legendary publication. What was that experience like, and what was it like seeing cannabis media through the eyes of like those two organizations?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would say it's always been where I've like been at is like doing photo, video, content. I started like myself as like an influencer more or less, and my job at High Times was really great because I was still in school at the time. I was still running Smart. Well, like, I am still running Smart, but I was still on campus running the Brown chapter. We did have that event that I mentioned in 2018. And I was working with one of the VPs at High Times who was a Brown alum himself. So that worked out. And we held that successful event. And he said, "Hey, listen, you can come to Brown, you can come to High Times, and work with us. And I was like, well, listen, I'm trying to take some time off from school, so that would be perfect, like to come for the fall. So he granted me that opportunity to come and just shoot content for the month, and just help out there. That's when I got to interview Moneybagg Yo, before I even knew who Moneybagg Yo was. So I was like, heard you. And nowadays I look back at that interview and I'm like, okay, like that is like he's lit. Right. I didn't know at the time, but like I said, I think that just those intersections between mainstream media, culture, hip hop, right, and cannabis has always been there. So to be able to sit at that intersection, and be somebody that people like look to and know of, that is kind of in that mix is like one of my biggest accomplishments. Even if I, stopped working today, right, just being able to kind of be in that realm as these things meld together. I think is really important because we're starting to see the licensing deals take place, right? We're starting to see how, Jay-Z's involved, right? Every rapper and their moms, has a strain or wants to create a product of some sort. Record labels are now seeing how can they use this to recreate, what was the original, sales on merch, but now can we explore what that looks like, right? When I know Party Next Door just did a party pack. Right. Mm-hmm. So you had flour, you had the Persian, the party pack disc, that they just dropped, with as well as like a lighter and some rolling papers that he did with my boy Z's Life, right? So, you know, I was there to able to help kind of just facilitate that collaboration, not on the whole party pack, but at least on the rolling paper side of things. But that still goes to show, right, like how this is starting to come about, while, you know, they're going to be looking to folks who have that expertise, the knowledge and experience in this space to help create some of these new cool experiential marketing opportunities for artists and for, you know, like whether it's music or just culture in general. You know, we see so many folks like Joe Fresh Goods, Cares by Anwar, you know, Chinatown Market, right? Like, you don't be surprised if you see more and more of these people, you know, creating bongs, creating, you know, different product lines, right? So that's kind of what I've been seeing, and just trying to do what I can to position myself to be a resource and somebody that can lead some of that stuff.
Yeah, yeah. And speaking of dope experiences, man, we've been together a couple times over like the last month for some kind of lit stuff. Right. First, Massachusetts, man, like us all mobbing up and being there in Massachusetts for Shayun's grand opening and Elevate. For me, seeing all those beautiful Black people there, especially in that community, meant a lot for me, man. What was it? You know, what was that like for you up there? What's your perspective on it?
Oh yeah, that was super motivation. I mean, that was probably like a week or two after I left Herb, because I was working at Herb for the past year when I was finishing school last fall up until, you know, this past October. And so, you know, kind of just taking a break from that because it was just through the pandemic. It was, I was working there when I was in my last semester of school too, full time. So just kind of like all that combined, I wanted to take a break after a year, but then being able to go to Shayun's event for Elevate Cannabis in Athol, Massachusetts was, you know, really good, just like motivation, quick spark to see everybody again too. Not everybody, but just at least like yourself, Leo, like just some of the people that we typically are, you know, seeing each other, you know, 3, 4, 5 times a year minimum, you know what I mean? Because we're always at conferences and events and we always have after hours. So that's usually like our time to bond and build. And I feel like that's been so important for us as Black people in the space too, to have that communion, because you don't, you know, you get to work at home, you're in the grind by yourself, but then to just be together with your people and be like, oh, okay, like this is why we do it, you know, this is exactly, you know, the history that we're trying to make, right, and the precedents that we're trying to set, is always like I said, reaffirming and just re-energizing, because it gets hard out here when you playing these political games and when you're trying to just, you know, deal with fucking white supremacy, racism, sexism, you know, you name it. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm excited for Shayun. He's a multi-state operator now, right? Like that's, you know, kudos to him again. So happy to like, for us to be there to support him as well, right? To just also be like, yo, people will show up. Like, we are here for you. I feel like all that stuff is super important and why we did what we did. It was a moment, you know?
Yeah, definitely to support him and the energy that I left with was so dope, man. Like you said, just being around all of y'all. And then to talk about the second one, man, and this is like recent in New Jersey, yep. Man. We literally did all come together like the Avengers, man. We had everybody working on this, man. It's wild because I don't think I ever really even realized how many people like in the cannabis industry are like from Jersey or live in Jersey. So to be able to do that was, I thought it was super cool, man. So to talk for people that are listening that may not know about, I know everyone knows that New Jersey legalized cannabis through the vote last week, or November 3rd, but could you talk a little bit more about the bills that were proposed and why we were opposed to it and just that little process a little bit more?
Yeah, so right now on the ballot is Bill 821. And so Senator Nicholas Scutari introduced the bill last year, I believe, as S21. It's reintroduced again. Not much has changed. The main thing that's changed is it's about 90% the same, and with now some added municipality clauses and controls there. So they'll be able to determine, you know, and ban cannabis. So that's kind of one thing. And unfortunately, this bill didn't get passed the last time. So for them to reintroduce it and to have a 200-page bill that doesn't say social equity in it. And yet, you know, we were on the call, the assembly hearing last week, and we had Mr. Joseph Danielson tell us that this is the most progressive bill in the country, you know, and telling folks that are, you know, just not your everyday people, but folks who are obviously working in the cannabis space day to day and year to year. is actually, it's gaslighting in its most like vivid sense, right? So that was definitely, like, to your point, just kind of like, where it's like, yay, I'm glad we're doing this together, because damn, wow, like, these people are really, committed to saying that this is what you consider equitable, this is what you consider a step in the right direction, right? There's the issues with tax allocations, there's issues with home grow not being on the bill. Currently, only about 15% of licenses would be reserved for racial minorities. Another 15% would be reserved for veterans, and another 15% would be reserved for women-owned businesses. So it's just to say that we really, are not doing what we said we were going to do in terms of helping those who are harmed the most, right? So if I was harmed the most, you need to help me the most, right? This is what equity is about in the most basic sense. So, that is something that, we have to speak up for, to your point, from all angles, from people who are patients, from people who are entrepreneurs, from people who are advocates in that sense. And I'm glad, at least we got to see that the bill got paused, or at least is on hold as of last week. But it is definitely like, we had big corporations that were on the call that didn't speak up in the name of equity, right? So it's to say that some people are happy with this and some people aren't. And it's the same old tale of like, who's happy and who's not, and why is that the case, right? And it's nothing new, unfortunately. And it's not to say that also New Jersey, in terms of at least Governor Murphy, every time he's talked about cannabis in the last 4 or 5 years, he's been bringing up equity. So I know they know what the word is, right? And for it to kind of just be evaporated as soon as the bill, gets passed, everybody's happy around legalization on Friday, and then you see 0 business days later on Monday, we're trying to pass something real quick. It's like, what is going on here? So we see that, right? Advocates see that, folks in the space see that. So that's what's going on.
Yeah, and it looks like the other bill for the decrim bill is up for vote in the Senate today. Up to 6 ounces. I believe it's distribution up to 1 ounce is like a minor offense, and possession of up to 1 ounce of psilocybin. So, I'll say that I'm glad to see that on the justice side, they're making some good strides. But like you said, on this access to the industry is something completely different. And we have to make sure that we stay focused on the economic outcome of it, not just the criminal side of it.
Yeah, and I mean, even to the criminal side, I had somebody comment on Smart's page, a CBD store from New Jersey, talking about, oh, if they committed a crime, that was the law when that was the law, and then blah, 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 right? So that's garbage too, right? And to your point of like, yeah, decriminalization is happening, but what's up with expungement, right? Do we need funding earmarked to make sure that people can get, all that process really quickly? Because we've seen the government websites. You go to njledge.gov, and that is one of the most basic and most difficult websites to operate, right? And I'm somebody who uses computers and who is supposed to be in tune with computers, let alone the people who may be 30, 40, 50 years old who are dealing with the expungement records, right? Or even just young people who don't know how to use that website, because I'm telling you, it's extremely difficult. So, what is up with that though, right? Because that is, again, oh, we're just looking forward. We're not looking back. We didn't do nothing back here, right? So I think that's kind of, right, the one issue that we need to think about as well too, is like the future and what we have done to people in the past, because people can't get their life back. There was a gentleman on the assembly hearing that was, going nuts, right? He was screaming. He was very upset, very emotional. And people will say, hey, like, that's not called for, like, time and place. But it's like, do you know what this man went through? Do you know what
he said he lost his job, was like, was in jail, and now you're talking about
by their family, right? Like, for something that you're gonna go ahead and make millions of dollars off of, billions of dollars off of. So it's like, I totally understand there's this need for, political correctness and formality, but some, people's lives were indeed ruined in the most visceral sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. And New Jersey, I think it's important for us to get it right here, because where we're positioned is going to mean a lot for so many other places on the East Coast. So if we let them get away with it here, they're going to try to get away with it everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, if we don't have social equity here, New York is going to say it's a breeze. They're going to try to, do the same thing. So Connecticut, right? It's like they're not gonna, oh well, New Jersey's doing it, right? You know, New Jersey's law, right? Is there gonna be a lot of comparisons in that way? So we don't want to be the folks setting that precedent where people can look to us and not be a good example.
Yeah, man. You know, it's so dope, bro. You really have been able to accomplish so much in such a short amount of time. And it's definitely because of the hustle, man. Like I always knew you were doing stuff, but I didn't even realize you were like in school full time, working full time. Like, and that grind is like what it takes to like make it in this, right? Like people always ask me, like, dang, I see you doing so much, but it's like you got to. You know, for somebody like you know, who's been able to achieve a lot while you're young and still has so much more to go, bro. Like what type of advice do you give for other college students, you know, like young alumni or people in color like that want to try to get an opportunity in the cannabis industry?
Yeah, I mean, like for me, I just feel like the easiest thing is just do something for free. Like if you don't want to do it for free, you don't want to do it. You know what I mean? Like I do this shit for free. I've been doing it for free for years, you know, and then I got to start getting paid for it because I knew how to break it down. I knew, you know, what value I was bringing to the table, but I had to learn what value I was bringing to the table too. I had to, you know, also sharpen my skill to bring more value to the table. So it's a matter of kind of taking what you already knew. I had my photo and video that always let me get into a room. And then I could expand upon that, right? Then I learned how to use that for social media, how to gear it towards that for businesses, how to make that a tool that was sought after and needed. So being able to think about where the value is and how you could bring that is always like the biggest thing. But the only way I was able to do that was by, you know, just having conversations and, you know, being out there, getting involved with people and just listening and asking questions, you know, saying, oh, that's how your business goes. Oh, what, you know, oh, is this, and you're operating in California? Oh, okay. How much does it cost per pound? How much does it cost? Like, I just ask all types of questions until they say like, matter of fact, I'm not going to tell you that. Or they just keep telling you because it's like, I'm just asking. Like, it's one thing to ask questions. It's one thing to go and execute a plan. So that's why I don't necessarily get like concerned anymore about like sauce. It's like, yo, you can tell somebody everything in the world. If they're not going to do it, they're not going to do it. And I think that's at a certain point, you just got to go do it. Right. Like whether it's you getting on calls and, you know, calling your senator just to have experience on what that script is like, because all those things translate to, you know, aspects of business. You know, whether it's sending emails and being in, you know, admin support or it being in the lab, right? Like all those things relate to this industry. So, but at the end of the day, it's going to be about your relationships and meeting people and what opportunities you can find and create for yourself, because not everything in this industry is like, here's the job, you know, $60K with health benefits. And, you know, it's like, I haven't had that job yet. I'm not really looking for that job, you know. I'm looking to do something for, you know, myself and for others, but in a way that, you know, you got to build it from the ground up. So I think that's kind of one thing is like, if you're looking for that cushy lifestyle, you might want to look elsewhere in the meantime. But if you're ready to just dive headfirst into something, maybe do some things for free, and maybe just like make sure that you're lined up with the right people who want to see you win, you'll be good.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think that's great advice, man. Like you said, you got to start somewhere, learn it and prove what you could do, man, and make yourself valuable. That's great advice. Yeah, man. And so for all the people out there listening, man, tell everybody where they could catch up with you, you know, where they can find you on social and all of that. And, you know, what's some of the next thing, what's some stuff you're working on now?
Yeah. So for everybody who wants to stay in touch, you know, this is my first and last name on Instagram and Twitter, first and last name @gmail.com. And then Smart, you can find us at studentmmj.com, at Student MMJ Alliance. So, you know, that's where you can tap in with us. For myself, I'm just looking forward to continue to work. You know, I'm East Coast project lead at Can Inclusive right now. So we've been having some really great things in the works. You know, shout out that team for building out the accountability list, the inclusive base, just building out these really strong data sets, right? That this industry needs, because as much as there's been tools and money invested in kind of tearing down and destroying Black and brown communities, we need to really start building these other, you know, types of systems to hold account, and to keep people responsible in a way that's, you know, everybody can see. So shout out to them. So yeah, you can continue doing work with them. Holiday season is coming, so there's gonna be a lot of giveaways, gonna be a lot of excitement, gonna try to bring some holiday cheer, you know, into 2020 a little bit, because it's been rough out here. And yeah, just we're excited to help businesses all of 2021 as well. I know right now, money is the name of the game. There's a lot of talks on just VC raising money, and the support that social equity operators, but just growing businesses are going to need in the cannabis space in general. So I look forward to kind of just working more with businesses on that end as well, and helping investors and folks get into the space.
Yeah, man. And definitely shout out to Mary and the whole Can Inclusive fam. Actually, if you're listening, if you're an NCIA member or not, we have we're publicly endorsing and supporting the accountability list. So we have a link to it on our website. As a cannabis company, this is a great tool to make sure that you are holding yourself accountable and that we're trying to build a diverse and inclusive industry. So please support the accountability list for everybody out there in the cannabis industry listening. And bro, it's definitely good catching up with you, man. Like I said, I'm gonna be all up in Jersey, man, over this next whatever. So I'm definitely gonna pull up on you and holler at you, man.
Let's do it. We'll be around. Let's make sure we masked up 6 feet apart.
Masked up 6 feet apart. You could smoke your J outside over there.
Yeah, we got plenty. But beautiful. Yo, thank you so much. Thank you to the NCIA team. Thank you, Vince, for making this possible and just making it super smooth and fun time.
Absolutely, bro. We'll link up soon.